The house listing went live with photos I didn't recognize, price 15% below what we'd agreed, under a contact name that wasn't mine. The open house was already scheduled. The lockbox code had been changed. I found out because a neighbor texted me a screenshot from the listing and asked if everything was okay. He was in the backyard when I stepped outside, crouched near the fence with my dog's leash looped around his wrist, tightening a loose board I hadn't noticed before. He looked up, smiled, and said the gate had been sticking. He said it was fixed now. 2 weeks earlier, he'd stopped traffic on my street. I was backing out of the driveway when a delivery truck came too fast around the corner. He stepped into the road without hesitation, arm out, palm up. The truck braked hard. Nothing happened. The driver yelled. He waved it off and helped guide me out like it was nothing. He said he lived 3 houses down. He said he'd seen me struggling with the gate before and figured he'd help next time. He introduced himself with his first name only and handed my dog a treat like he'd done it before. After that, he started appearing at the right moments. When a package was left in the rain, it was already under my porch. When the sprinkler timer malfunctioned, he reset it before I noticed the lawn browning. When my car wouldn't start one morning, he knocked on the window and asked if I needed a jump. He never came inside at first. He stayed on the steps, leaning back, giving space. He talked about small things. The block. The weather. Which houses were selling faster than expected. He didn't ask what I did for work. I invited him in the night a storm knocked out power. He brought a flashlight and a battery pack and checked the breaker panel like he knew the layout. He didn't make a show of it. He fixed the issue and sat at the kitchen table while the lights came back on, charging his phone and mine at the same time. We ate soup out of mismatched bowls. He washed them after without being asked. He started walking my dog in the mornings when he saw me rushing. He didn't ask permission. He just clipped the leash on and brought him back before my calls started. The dog followed him easily. When I mentioned I was thinking of selling the house, he didn't comment. He asked how long I'd lived there. He asked what I loved about it. He said houses remembered people if you stayed long enough. A few days later, he left a folded note under my door with the name of a local agent he trusted and a number to call if I wanted a second opinion. He didn't follow up. I called him anyway. Not the agent. Him. I asked if he could take the dog for a few hours while I met with someone. He said of course. That was when he came inside without me there. By the time I got back, the dog was asleep, the kitchen counter was clear, and there was a single sticky note by the sink saying the back door needed a new latch. He said he could install it if I wanted. He installed it the next day. He had the part already. He said it was standard. We started sleeping together without talking about it. He stayed late and left early, fitting into the edges of my routines. He didn't bring a bag. He didn't take up space. He learned the house faster than I expected. He knew which windows stuck, which floorboard creaked, which closet door needed a lift to close. When the agent came by, he stayed in the background. He answered questions when they were asked generally. He pointed out features I'd forgotten. He corrected measurements without looking at notes. After the agent left, he said the pricing felt aggressive. He said the market was shifting. He said we could test it and adjust. I told him I trusted his instincts. That was before the listing went live without me. I stood on the porch holding my phone while he finished tightening the last screw on the fence. He wiped his hands on his jeans and said the yard looked better already. Inside, my phone buzzed again. Another message. Someone asking about parking for the open house. I didn't answer. He clipped the leash back onto the hook by the door, the one he'd installed himself, and asked if I wanted coffee. I said yes. The open house happened without me being there. I found out because he sent a photo mid-morning of fresh flowers on the kitchen island, the kind I never bought, with a short message saying traffic was steady and everything was under control. He didn't ask where I was. He didn't ask if I wanted updates. He sent one more photo later of the sign-in sheet. Names blurred, numbers circled. When I came home that afternoon, the house smelled like citrus cleaner. Shoes were lined up by the door that usually stayed scattered. The thermostat was set 2 degrees lower than I liked it. He was in the living room, sitting on the floor with my dog, rubbing his ears slowly, talking to him like they had a routine I wasn't part of. He said the showing went well. He said people lingered. He said one couple asked about the roof and he'd explained the repairs better than the agent usually did. He said the agent was impressed. I asked why the price was lower. He didn't answer right away. He stood up, washed his hands, dried them carefully. Then he said it was strategic. He said momentum mattered more than margin at the start. He said we'd create urgency and bring it up later. He said that's how it worked now. I didn't argue. I told myself I hadn't been paying attention to the market anyway. After that, he handled the calls. He said it made sense since he was already fielding questions during the open house. He sat at the dining table with his laptop and a notebook, jotting things down, nodding while people spoke. He summarized conversations for me later in the evening while we ate. He started using we when he talked about the house. We'd updated the latch. We'd staged the guest room. We were getting good feedback on the yard. It sounded natural. I didn't correct it. The agent stopped looping me in on emails. When I asked, she said it was just easier to communicate through one point of contact. She said he was always available. She said he knew the house inside and out. At night, he slept with his arm heavy across my waist, anchoring me in place. He woke before me and made coffee, leaving the mug where I'd reach for it without opening my eyes. He didn't rush me. He waited. He fixed small things that made the house feel finished. He replaced a cracked outlet cover. He adjusted cabinet doors so they closed evenly. He patched a scuff on the hallway wall and painted it to match without leaving a trace. The house looked better than it had in years. I let him bring in a stager for a consultation. Just a consultation. He said it wouldn't hurt to hear them out. The woman walked through and made notes while he followed, asking questions I wouldn't have thought to ask. When she left, he said we didn't need her. He said we were already doing most of it right. He rearranged the furniture anyway. There were small moments that didn't quite settle. A voicemail from the agent thanking him for approving a showing I didn't know about. A text from a neighbor asking if they should move their car for Saturday traffic. An email confirmation for a document I hadn't signed. Each time he explained it easily. He said things moved fast. He said it was temporary. He said we'd go over everything once the first offer came in. One evening, while we were folding laundry, he mentioned that buyers felt more comfortable dealing with someone who seemed permanently present. He said it made negotiations smoother. He asked if I minded if his name stayed on the listing contact for now. I said I didn't. He folded my shirts carefully, stacking them by color, and put them away in the dresser I'd cleared space for him in. That night, he locked the doors before bed, checking each one twice. He said it was better this way. He said the house was already halfway gone. I believed him. The first offer came in while I was on a call. He waited until I hung up before saying anything. He set his phone face down on the counter and poured me water like we were about to talk about the weather. He said there was interest. He said it was strong. He said it was clean. We sat at the kitchen table with the afternoon light coming in low through the windows he'd cleaned that morning. He pulled his laptop toward him but angled it so I could see without leaning in. The offer was below ask but close to the number he'd said we'd likely land on. He pointed to contingencies and timelines and said they were favorable. He said the buyer wanted momentum. He said we could counter or we could move. I asked what he thought. He didn't answer right away. He asked how tired I was of living in a house that was already half-staged. He asked how it felt to have strangers walking through my rooms every weekend. He said accepting early kept leverage. He said waiting invited noise. I nodded. I'd been sleeping lightly for weeks. The dog barked at every knock now. He slid a tablet across the table. Not toward me, just into the space between us. He said the agent had prepared a counter, but that there was an addendum that would make things easier. He said it allowed him to handle back and forth directly within agreed parameters, so I wouldn't have to keep stopping my day. The language was short. It said I authorized him to negotiate and accept an offer on my behalf within a defined range. Said it was limited. said it was revocable. It said it would expire once we were under contract. I read it. I recognized the format. It looked like the kind of thing agents used when sellers traveled or didn't want to be available at odd hours. He didn't rush me. He stood up and took the dog outside, giving me space. When he came back, I'd made a mark next to the line where my initials would go. He didn't comment. He handed me a pen and held the tablet steady while I signed. He didn't look at the screen while I did it. After that, things smoothed out. I stopped getting alerts. He summarized instead. He said the buyer responded well to the counter. He said inspections were scheduled. He said it was on track. He handled calls while I worked. He sent one-line updates that ended with all good. At night, he slept close again. He reached for me in small, absent ways that felt familiar. He made breakfast in the mornings and packed lunches we didn't eat. He took the dog on longer walks so showings could happen without disruption. There were moments that passed too cleanly. An inspector arrived earlier than planned. A repair was approved before I saw the estimate. A form was submitted with my name already filled in. Each time, he said it fell within what we'd discussed. I let it. The inspection report came back with notes. Minor things. He said he'd negotiated credits. He said the buyer agreed. He said we were moving toward closing faster than expected. He started talking about what came next. Not plans. Logistics. Where we'd store things temporarily. How we'd handle mail. He suggested I forward packages to his place for a bit since he was home more. He said it was simpler. I gave him the change of address form to drop off when he walked the dog. One afternoon, I noticed the listing status had changed to pending. I hadn't seen the final acceptance. When I asked, he said it had come in late. He said he didn't want to wake me. He said it was within range. He said it was done. I believed him. That evening, he poured wine and said we should celebrate. He said the hardest part was over. He said I'd trusted him and it had paid off. We sat on the porch and watched the street quiet down. He leaned his head against my shoulder and stayed there longer than usual. Inside, my phone buzzed once. A notification about a document upload. I didn't open it. He locked the door behind us and set the alarm, the way he always did now. I went to bed thinking the house would stop feeling like it was slipping away once there was a date on the calendar. It already had. After the status changed to pending, he stopped asking what I wanted. Not directly. He phrased things as updates, not questions. He said the buyer preferred a flexible closing window. He said the escrow company needed a primary contact. He said it made sense for it to be him since he'd already been handling most of the coordination. He said it would spare me interruptions. The emails stopped coming to me. When I checked the portal the agent had set up weeks earlier, my login didn't work. I tried resetting the password and got a message saying access had been reassigned. When I asked the agent, she said it was standard once a delegate was named. She said he'd asked to streamline communication. She said it was temporary. At home, the house felt quieter. Not calmer. Just managed. He packed boxes without labeling them and stacked them neatly in the garage. He decided which rooms would stay staged and which could be cleared. When I moved a lamp back where I liked it, he shifted it again later, explaining it photographed better where he'd put it. He stopped sleeping close. He still slept there, but on his side, turned away, getting up before I did. The dog followed him in the mornings. I stayed in bed longer than usual, listening to the front door lock. One afternoon, a man came by to measure windows. He introduced himself to me by name and thanked me for approving the order. I hadn't known there was an order. When I asked what it was for, he said it was standard buyer prep. He said it was already cleared. That evening, I asked him why things were being approved without me. He said they weren't. He said I'd approved the framework. He said everything fell within it. He said I'd asked him to handle the noise. He said this was what that looked like. I didn't argue. I watched him rinse his plate and place it carefully in the rack. He started taking calls outside. When I walked onto the porch, he lowered his voice and turned slightly away. Not hiding, just not including me. When he finished, he said it was nothing. He said things were on track. The agent dropped by with paperwork for review. She handed it to him first without thinking. He flipped through it quickly and set aside the pages he said I didn't need to see yet. He said we'd go over them later. She nodded like that was reasonable. Later didn't come. Instead, he brought up storage options. He said it would be easier to move some things out early. He suggested using his name for the unit since he'd be coordinating movers anyway. He said it avoided duplication. He said it didn't matter whose name was on it. I let him handle it. A week before closing, I tried to forward my mail and found it already submitted. My name was there, so was his listed as alternate. I didn't remember filling it out. When I mentioned it, he said he'd taken care of it when I was busy. He said it was one less thing. The buyer's inspection contingency cleared. He told me over dinner like it was good news, which it was. He raised his glass and said we were almost there. He said I should feel relieved. I nodded. That night, I woke to him on his phone in the dark, screen dimmed, typing with one hand. When he noticed I was awake, he turned it face down and said he couldn't sleep. He said it was nothing urgent. In the morning, my keys weren't where I left them. They were on the counter, grouped together with his, under a note reminding me the locksmith would be by later to rekey after final walkthrough. He said it was required. He said he'd be there to let them in. I went to work anyway, even though I hadn't planned to. My phone buzzed twice during the day. Updates. Short. Informational. No response needed. When I came home, the locks were already changed. He opened the door from inside and handed me a new set of keys, still on a hardware store ring. He said it was temporary. He said it was just until everything closed. I took them. They were lighter than the old ones. The final walkthrough happened while I was at work. He texted a photo of the empty living room, sunlight on bare floors, the walls clean where our pictures had been. He said the buyers were pleased. He said it went quickly. He didn't ask if I wanted to be there. When I got home, the house felt hollow in a way I couldn't place at first. Not staged. Finished. The boxes in the garage were stacked tighter, wrapped in clear plastic. My name wasn't on any of them. His wasn't either. He was on the phone when I walked in, speaking in a low, even voice. He held up one finger to signal a minute and kept talking. I heard my name once. I heard the address. I heard him say yes and thank you. When he hung up, he said closing was confirmed. He said it would be fast. I asked when I needed to sign. He said he'd let me know. That night, he didn't stay. He said he had an early meeting with the movers and would sleep closer to the house they were staging next. He kissed my cheek like it was a habit and left with a small overnight bag. The dog watched from the hallway and didn't move. In the morning, I noticed the garage remote was gone from the hook. I checked the drawer where we kept extras. Empty. When I texted him, he replied that he had it. He said it was easier if one person handled access. He said he'd bring it back later. Later didn't come. The agent called in the afternoon. She asked if I had any questions before tomorrow. I asked before what? She paused, then said before closing. She said everything was in order. She said congratulations. I asked where I needed to be. She said he had it covered. That evening, I drove past the house instead of going home. There was a new lockbox on the door, silver instead of black. The porch light was on. I sat in the car and watched a couple walk up, try the handle, and step inside like they belonged there. My phone buzzed. A message from him saying he'd forwarded final documents from my records. Records, not review. At home, the kitchen counter was clear except for a single envelope with my name, written carefully on the front. Inside was a cashier's check, folded once, the amount handwritten on the corner. It was less than I expected. There was no note. I checked my email. A message from the escrow company confirmed funds disbursed per instructions. It thanked me for a smooth transaction. It listed him as point of contact. I called him. It rang once and went to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. The dog paced until I clipped the leash on and took him out. We walked past houses with lights on and televisions flickering behind curtains. The street felt farther away from me than it had in years. When I got back, his toothbrush was gone. The drawer where he kept socks was empty. The spare set of keys wasn't on the hook anymore. The garage remote was still missing. I slept on the couch without meaning to. In the morning, there was a text from him. He said the movers would come by later to collect the boxes in the garage. He said I didn't need to be there. He said it would be better if I wasn't. I watched from the window as the truck pulled up. He stepped out first, directing them with small gestures. He didn't look at the house. He didn't look up. They loaded everything quickly. The garage door closed behind them and stayed closed. When they drove away, the house across the street looked the same as always. Mine didn't belong to me anymore. I stood in the driveway holding the lighter set of keys he'd given me and realized they didn't open anything I owned. The closing confirmation arrived without a signature from me. I saw it when I opened my email out of habit. A short message marked completed. Thanked me again. It listed the address in the past tense. It included a PDF labeled Final Statement. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I drove to the house anyway. The new owners were already there. Their car was in the driveway, backed in like they'd practiced. The porch light was off. The silver lockbox was gone. There was a wreath on the door that hadn't been there yesterday. I stood on the sidewalk and watched through the front window while they walked room to room, pointing, talking, making plans out loud. The dog tugged on the leash, confused by the familiar smells layered with something new. I didn't take him closer. At home, the movers had been thorough. The garage was empty. The floor showed pale rectangles where boxes had sat. The shelf where I kept paint cans was bare. Even the ladder was gone. On the kitchen counter, there was one more envelope. This one wasn't handwritten. It was typed, my name centered, folded once. Inside was a copy of the disbursement summary. The numbers were final. The shortfall wasn't an error. There was also a note. One sentence. He said everything had been handled within the authority I'd given. He said it was cleaner this way. I sat down at the table where we'd folded laundry and signed things and talked about nothing. The chair across from me was empty. It had been empty for days. I just hadn't stopped using it. In the afternoon, the bank called to confirm receipt. Not to ask questions. To confirm. The woman on the line spoke carefully and thanked me for my cooperation. When I asked if there was anything pending, she said no. She said the account associated with the property had been closed. I hung up and unplugged the phone. The dog followed me from room to room while I checked each door. The new keys didn't fit anything except the front and back. The garage opener was gone. The shed was locked with a padlock I didn't recognize. I found the last box in the hall closet. It was small. Inside were things the movers hadn't taken. A spare leash. A stack of takeout menus. The latch he'd replaced, wrapped in paper, screws taped to it. He must have removed it before the showing. The old one was back on the door, loose. That evening, I walked the dog without a destination. When we came back, the porch light next door flicked on automatically. Ours didn't. I didn't turn it on. Later, a message came through from an unknown number. It was short. He said the forwarding address had been updated and that anything important would reach me. He said he hoped the transition wouldn't be too disruptive. I deleted it. The next morning, a rental listing went live with photos of my house after I'd left it. Empty. Clean. Neutral. The description called it turnkey. It didn't mention me. It didn't mention him. I spent the day canceling things. Utilities. Services. Appointments tied to an address that wasn't mine anymore. Each call ended politely. Each confirmation closed something. In the evening, I found the dog sitting by the back door waiting. I opened it. The latch caught. I lifted it and closed the door again. It didn't sit right. I tightened the screws until the metal bit into the wood. The door closed cleanly. I packed what was left into the trunk of my car. It didn't take long. The house echoed when I walked through it one last time. Not because it was empty, because it wasn't mine. I locked the door and left the keys on the counter as instructed. Across town, someone else slept in my bedroom for the first time. I drove until the street names changed and parked somewhere unfamiliar. I turned off the engine and sat there with the dog breathing steadily beside me. Nothing followed.